I want to be able to show other people, say, shit happens, I get it, but actually you don't have to accept that way of living.
On today's episode of Road to Leadership, I have the absolute pleasure of having a conversation with someone who is the founder of Resilience Cubed, and we're going to talk about resilience a lot today, and you're going to hear about why in a minute. He's also the founder of C-Tech, which is a UK-based tech consultancy and advisory business. Apart from that, he runs his own consultancy company. You would have seen him, actually, more than likely in the amazing Love Languages documentary, which is on Netflix, or in the book that Elliot Ray had on Dads, called The Dad. So he shared some of his story in there. But today we'll just go a little bit deeper. We unpack some of that. And Alec Grant is in the studio with me. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm good, man. I'm really good. Good to be here.
It's topic of, like I said, topic of resilience is definitely in front of mind for me because of who you are, what you do. The wonderful conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, I was just like, man, this is Alex is dropping some gems in here. We need to step into that for sure. But even before we even go there, actually, I always want to take it a step back and just understand a bit more around what was a younger Alec like growing up.
Ooh. So I was sporty. Actually, is the first thing. Yeah. So I was into so many sports that there weren't many sports that I didn't do at school because I was just active. I was full of so much energy and just loved doing sports. Loved reading. So I was up at the library every week or every other week, taking out books. And I think I remember reading spy stories. That's what first got me.
James Bond kind of film.
Author called.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it kind of started, and then I found an author called Len Dighton. Started reading some of his books. Then I kind of got into Sherlock Holmes, so I read pretty much all of those. Then I read some more of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's other non-Sherlock Holmes books and got into those. Then it was like The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. And then started reading kind of like self-development type books and things like that. I'm not even sure how that happened, just kind of stumbled onto it. So in between, liking my sport, which was football at the time, moved away on from football now as an adult, but football, basketball, athletics, gymnastics, and then my reading, and I liked school as well. I'm one of those weird people that liked school, so I liked learning. I had a thirst for learning, and so you couldn't really give me enough, because it was just like, okay, more, and the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Would you say you were in? Because it's quite interesting to have someone who likes school, heavily into sports, likes reading. That's like three different kind of crowds or identities that you have, especially as a young teenager. So what crowd did you fit into? I'm curious.
That's the thing, because I hadn't even thought of it like that, in terms of those things being separate lanes. It was just like stuff that I was into, so I would transition across each of those things, at will, and didn't think to it. But even as you've just mentioned that now about crowds, you're right in that what it did mean for me was that I didn't actually fit in with one crowd. So if I look at it, and some time ago I kind of looked at it a little bit, but didn't really go into it. But if you look at it, I had a mixture of different types of friends at school. And that has continued throughout my whole life, actually. When you look at people that associate with now, friends or acquaintances to a greater or lesser degree, there's a mixture of different people from different backgrounds, industries, ages. I can relate to, I say, much older generation. I'm 50 next year, so people in the 70s, 80s, and have conversations, sit down and whatever, right the way through to the much younger generations. And I guess I never felt like I'd had to be part of one crowd either. I didn't feel that peer pressure. While looking back on some of my formative years, I know a lot of people did. Like, for example, one of the crowd I distinctly remember, secondary school in particular, we're just starting to get into tried out alcohol and smoking and so on. And I remember I tried a cigarette once, maybe twice. It might have been a push 3 times, and I'm talking about a couple of puffs, no more than that. I'm like, nah, that ain't happening. So I'm like, I don't even know what you lot see this. You lot go and knock yourselves out, but it ain't for me. And similarly with alcohol as well. I remember we went on a school outdoor pursuits trip for like 5 days or something like that. And one of the boys, I don't even know how he managed to get it. He got some cans of whatever, lager, beer, whatever it was at the time. And he'd got like 2 cans for a siege or something like that. I don't know who we thought we were at 11, 12, but he managed to do that. And I took like 3 sips of this can of lager. I'm like, nope, who wants mine? I'm like, no, you got to keep trying. That's what they was. I'm like, look, if it's not nice on the first or second or third sip, it's not happening, right? And if I have to drink copious amounts of it to acquire a taste for it, then it means it's not for me. So, and it wasn't like I didn't do the alcohol thing, because I was raised by my Jamaican grandmother, and some of her traditional approaches to, if you had a cold or something like that, she would put a couple of drops of brandy, only a couple, in a hot chocolate or something like that. So it wasn't like I wasn't aware of, I hadn't been around alcohol or whatever. I knew where the bottle was. There was no drinks cabinet or whatever. I knew where she put it. Could have easily got it at any time, but there was no interest in doing that. Plus, as well, alcohol wasn't a big thing. Big thing wasn't made of it. It wasn't taboo, but it also, I guess it was just managed, for occasions, nice occasions and things like that. Not something that would be done on a regular basis. So, yeah.
It sounds very much like you are someone who, you knew your own mind even from a young age, where it was like,
Absolutely.
try that, a couple of puffs, not for me. I've tried alcohol, not feeling it, not for me. Because a lot of times it's quite easy to either let, whether it's social pressure or peer pressure, kind of push you to keep on doing something over and over again. But you're someone who's very much self-assured and, I know what I like, what I don't like, and I'm willing to just push back on other people.
Yeah, I don't know where that comes from, because I've tried to understand it, and I still don't. In that, why did I not feel that pressure? Because it was there around me. It was there around me all the time. I remember probably 14, 15, 16. People were doing poppers and the whole shebang. Some of the boys had even moved on to steroids as they were getting, teens into young adult men, and getting into weights and stuff like that. And just none of that interested me at all. And, could have easily gotten it, if I wanted to, but just didn't interest me at all. Like I said, to this day, I'm baffled as to why I didn't feel the pressure, even though everyone was saying, try it and do this. And or even when it comes to music and to be into a particular scene and this, that, and that, I'm like, nah, I'm all right.
What's your scene for music?
So that was heavily influenced by my one side of my family in terms of my siblings. So my brother at the time, I remember he was into body popping and locking and whatever. So that type of music, as it was just coming to the fore, and hip hop, there was that influence from him. My sister, she was heavily into soul, and so the Luther Vandrosses and those guys. And she was into reggae, she was into lovers rock, there was Stevie, Stevie Wonder, and so on. So MJ, Off the Wall, Bad Album, Thriller.
Classics.
Oh, man. Man. So, yeah, heavily influenced by my brother and sister. Into genres of music, and that has continued. I mean, I've picked up other genres of music along the way as well, but yeah, it was rooted in those genres for sure.
When I look at you describing what I want to say, not conforming, and then I fast forward some of your career to you making that decision to step outside the corporate world, personally, I start to see a synergy because it's that same attitude of, okay, this is not the norm. This is, people be like, what you doing? Your man, your father, your husband, whatever it is, like, you don't step out of the corporate world. It's like, what are you playing at? But you being willing, again, I know my mind, I know what it is, why I'm doing it, and therefore being willing to take that on. I start to see that parallels happening in that side of things as well.
Good man, you got some good questions. Because I hadn't even looked at it like that either. That's why it takes someone else. It always takes someone else. When you can't see the wood for the trees, it takes someone else looking from the outside in. But you're right. As soon as the words came out of your mouth, I'm like, spot on, because I never felt at ease in the corporate world. Maybe when I had first graduated, maybe, but for the major part of my corporate career, never felt that it was forever. Even though I was a junior, still trying to make my way and didn't really know diddly squat in the grand scheme of things, never felt that it was going to be for me. And that actually... momentum, if you like, continued throughout my career to the point where, as I then got 5 years behind me, pushing to 10 years, I'm like, is this it? Is this it? I'd be getting the train and the tube, everyone's suited up, and I'm like, okay, so some of these people are a lot older than me. I wonder how long they've been doing it for. Some of these people are getting the train from Portsmouth, and beyond. So their journey is like 2 hours, just on the train or so. And I remember I had a conversation with a guy. He probably, I would say he was probably in his mid-50s at the time, and I was mid to late 30s. In fact, no, it happened before him. There was a guy in his 50s. And bonus time had come, and it was all right. He was. I overheard him having a conversation with his wife on the phone, and she was screaming down the phone. He'd obviously clearly got a huge bonus, and blah, blah, blah. She was all ecstatic and happy for him. And the thought that came through my head was that if you're in your 50s and you've ridden this cycle of working in the city and the crest of the wave of bonuses and years of doing really well, why are you even still here now? You've got like 2 or 3 kids. Why do you even need to do this? And then fast forward now to this other company, Jeremy. I remember the guy's name now, Jeremy. I said to Jeremy, so what's your exit strategy? And he's like, what? What do you mean? I'm like, so you've been in the city like 20 odd plus years, man. So, and you've been a contractor for the past how many years, and must be some good day rate. So you're out of here pretty soon, right? And he was like, no. I've got a 6-bedroom house. I've got, I think he said, 4 or 5 kids. My eldest is just gone off to university. My next one, my wife doesn't work. Blah blah blah. And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, I'm still here. I'm like, okay. So what's your plan? I'm like, I can't stay in here much longer. I've got to get out, man. This is, this just doesn't make sense to be on this treadmill, just going constantly. Especially when I look at where I've come from, and it feels, even as a black person, and even with all the challenges that I faced in that corporate world, in the city, that I've actually done all right for myself, probably better than a good number of the black community. And I don't feel the need to have to keep pushing and striving. All right, going to go for VP and then go for director and this, that, and that. I'm like, really? You see those hoops that they want you to jump through to reach all those positions? I ain't doing it. It's not happening. And I remember I held one of my bosses to task, took him to task. Well, maybe he might have viewed it that way, but I didn't view it in a bad way. Just like, it came round to appraisal and promotion and bonus time and this, that, and that. And stuff happened. And I said to him, so, when are you going to explain to me what is it that exactly it is that I needed to do to get the career progression and get the bigger piece of the bonus pie? And he goes, oh, you didn't ask. I'm like, excuse me? I'm like, you're my boss, right? So if it's not your responsibility to tell me that, then whose responsibility is it? And he was like, well, everyone else is out there. No one's complaining about this. I'm like, I don't care about anybody else. I'm talking about me, right? And it was your job to, as my boss, to lead and guide me. And I said, oh, right, okay, you know what? Now I understand. Okay, that's it is what it is. Fine. So, yeah, again, that was another point where I just thought, yeah. So there's a template of, in order to make progression, this is how you need to behave. This is what you need to do. These are the people that you need to mingle with. You need to go out and have drinks and stay out till whatever time and go to these places. I'm like, nope, you know what? Yeah, again, I'm saying I'm not doing that. It's not happening because I don't need to play those games. And what made it even worse was the fact that the organisation has tried to dress it up as if it was something else, like it wasn't a game that everybody had to play. And I'm like, nah, man, it's not happening. So I remember my late wife and I had a conversation and started having conversations over a period of a few years and said, so I definitely need to get out because this isn't right for me. And yeah, it was at that point that we started making plans to say, okay, we need to stop talking about an exit strategy and actually start putting some plans into place.
I was going to say that, listen to you share that. It's interesting how there's so many similar stories to people feeling like this is not right. This is not the right environment for me, or not necessarily even having the help and support. But I think what makes yours different is you did something about it. Whereas a lot of us just write it out like, okay, this is the game we need to play. These are the drinks we need to go to. These are the conversations we need to have.
Yeah.
This is the corporate environment. So I'm just going to play that game. But you're like, nah, I'm willing to bet on myself and do something else. But I love what you said right at the end where you like put a plan into place. I'm someone who, and I always say don't always follow my way of living. When I left corporate world, I didn't necessarily have a plan. It literally was a leap of faith that I'd literally left and stepped out. But you saying actually start to think about it, be intentional about it, put a plan into place and all of that kind of stuff, I think it's quite important.
Yeah.
But when you started planning, did it make you feel a lot better? Like even when you're doing a day to day, okay, you know what, the plan is to leave in a year. did that give you some impetus in the way you were doing your work because you knew there was a deadline in your mind that you're working towards?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I was having a conversation a good few months ago, and someone was talking about the same thing. And I said, the way I got out was the plan. And that plan also created freedom for me because, like, you know what? I know I'm only doing this. So when we put the plan into place proper, it was actually at the birth of my eldest son. And we basically said, by the time he gets to 3, one of us needs to be out in the corporate world. And it's more than likely to me because I had the crazy commute into London and all the challenges that brings. We basically said, he's not getting to his 3rd birthday and I'm still in the corporate world. So those few years leading up to that created focus. The first focus was within several months of him being born, I actually changed jobs and I jumped for money. Got no 2 ways about it. I'm like, okay, so I'm going to be out in less than 3 years' time now. So if I have to take a job that might not be the best job, but it's paying me X amount more money that I can bank, and we can bank and create that financial freedom, then doing it. So, and he could have, easily said, well, just, not long had a baby, been with the company that was there at the time 3 years, and relationships and all the rest of it built up, and some goodwill and so on. Maybe it wasn't the right thing to do, but it was simple numbers game. What number do you need to reach? Because the number was also based on try to do a couple of things and get sufficient money in the bank in order for me to do that for a minimum of 2 years and not make any income. Now, we didn't foresee not being able to make any income in 2 years. We basically said, what if we had no additional income, income from me personally, because my wife was still working in the corporate world. How much money would we need to maintain the standard of living and be okay? And the other bit actually isn't just about the planning from that aspect. It's also about the fact that up to that point, my wife and I had led. So it's definitely not frugal lives, but we chose what we wanted to spend our money on. So part of the planning was to say the things that we enjoy, the things that we get pleasure from, and all the rest of it, within reason, we'll put some money. We'll put some money to, we'll spend some money. But other things, we won't either put any money into or put the minimum amount of money. And we did that in order to be able to bank as much money as we possibly could to help towards the exit strategy. So, what that allowed, and interestingly enough, when I was leaving the last bank that I was at, my wife was pregnant with our second son. People were saying, "You're leaving? You're going to another bank or whatever?" I'm like, "No, I'm going solo. I'm going to set up a consultancy." And I'm like, "What? How can you afford to leave, corporate world and investment banking and blah, 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 and this, that, and the other?" And I'm like, because I haven't been spending all my money over the past few years. I haven't been taking my salary and my bonuses and getting the bigger car, the bigger house, going on holidays worth however much, spending however much on clothes and this, that, and the other. We went on some holidays and they were okay. We had a couple of nice cars and they were okay, but we just didn't push it. We didn't go crazy. So by the time, and you could see the confused looks on people's faces as if to say, "Are you crazy? You're going to leave this job and just set up on your own with no kind of whatever?" And I'm like, we haven't just been planning this just today. This has been a plan that has been in the making for the past few years. I even remember my last boss something had happened. There's a lot of noise going on with one of the applications that I had ownership of, and I rarely took lunch. And if it was really just pop out and come back in and fully at my desk as often we can do in that world. But at this time, I was like, you know what, I'm going out for lunch. And I took a longer lunch. I got a call on my phone, and my boss was like, "Oh, this is going around. Why aren't you at your desk?" I'm like, "Excuse me." I like, what? So like, look, I'll be back when I finish my lunch. And put the phone down, and then I called my wife and said, "I didn't bring my the disc with my resignation letter on it in, so I'm just going to type it out. I'm going to print it, and when I go back to, I'm going to go. I just had this from my boss. Can you go back to the office, type it the new one out, print it out, and handing it to him then." So I literally it was no more than 45 minutes of me getting back at my desk, typed up, printed it out. Said to my boss, "Look, we need to have a chat. It's really important. We need to have that now." He said, "Oh, what's wrong?" Just pull the letter out. I said, "There you go, I'm out." And he said, "Is it because of just, what happened?"
Yeah, because you called me at lunchtime. Right. Yes, you disturbed my lunchtime, so I'm out. Quite simple. Let a brother eat.
Yeah. And he said, "I'm going to hang on to this for a couple of days." And I'm like, no. Give it to HR now, please. Right? You don't need to hold on to it for any amount of time. I'm out, right? So, it's over. I'm good. Enjoyed the ride, but I'm done.
It's I think a lot of times we let life happen to us. We don't take the time to actually create the kind of lifestyle that we want. And I think in the culture in a world where we're always on the go, we're always moving, it's hard for us to slow down. We're like, well, what is the lifestyle that I want to create? What am I willing to put up with to create a lifestyle? What am I willing to sacrifice to create that lifestyle? Having those conversations is super important, because then we now know, okay, I'm exerting my energy in this way because it allows me to create that future lifestyle that I'm heading towards, rather than I'm just in a hamster wheel going around. But one day I'm going to get there. I'm going to stop and go. Like, no, one day never happened. One day is such a great phrase that people have. One day I'm going to go do. In fact, there's a quote I had on my phone from Night which said, "Yesterday you said tomorrow." And I've had it on there for years because it always reminded me, like, now there is no one day. It's now, and you start to build those things and put them into place. Just like you were able to be like, 3 years, this is it. You can go into the office and they're like, is this a reaction? Like, no, it's not. This is planned. Like, I'm good. You were just a final confirmation.
Yeah.
So now I'm out. And you've touched on it a number of times. You mentioned your wife, even having that, I guess, that partnership there, having that person there to have that conversation with, is such a really important thing. And I guess it leads me to the other part of your story, where you lost your wife, which you've talked about in the past in other books and different things like that. But even that experience for you, losing someone who is your partner, who's your best friend, who you plan and you've had all these different things for the future with. I mean, what was it for you, like, going through that experience?
Oh boy, yeah. So many elements to it. I think, to start with, as much as what's the word I'm looking for? The initial impact of my wife passing away was significant. One thing was really clear in my mind, and thing was, in order for me to do the best of my boys, I need to get myself into the best place that I possibly can. And I don't know where that thought came from, but it was like an overwhelming thing that was there. It was like, and I'm talking about within days of Hazel dying, it was work on yourself, work on yourself, work on yourself, because you're going to be no use to the boys if you don't. And in the subsequent time period, I remember, and I've got it up on my wall now, still, you can't pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself first. And I keep coming back to a related phrase when I talk to people about this, which is most of us have probably all been on a flight, and when the air staff go through their demonstrations and they say, when they talk about the masks falling from the ceiling, and they say, put your mask on first before you tend to someone else that is in your care. And so, I don't know how I did it, but I knew that I needed to figure out a way to. Obviously, I couldn't tend to myself in isolation because I had a newborn baby. Brought him home at 3 days, a 3-year-old. But within a matter of weeks, I was talking to a therapist and a counsellor. I engaged a grief charity who I went to some group therapy sessions. I contacted Widowed and Young, which is a charity, and over the course of that first year, put in place a number of things which I now know to be very pivotal to me getting through that first year and subsequent years. How was I being guided to that? I have absolutely no idea, because in the midst of the pain and the anguish and everything else, there was some clarity around a few things. I remember one of my relatives said to me, maybe 3 years after Hazel died, we were concerned about it. I said, of course you were. She said, no. You were so clear about certain things, we didn't know how or why you were clear about them. But you were saying, this needs to be done like this needs to be this. And we thought, is it grief? Is it something else? Is he whatever? Is he losing it? And so we wanted to just keep an eye on you and check in on you. But she said, clearly, those were absolutely the right things that you should have been doing. I don't know how you knew or did those things, because you shouldn't have been able to. You should not have been able to have clarity around certain things that you did, but somehow you did. Like I said, I don't know how. It just happened. They just happened. I'm not necessarily a religious man. I'm spiritual. So maybe something, universe, Hazel, my grandmother, was guiding me, supporting me, and bringing that clarity of thought. Yeah, those immediate, that immediate time period and subsequent time afterwards. Don't get me wrong. Was I crying on many occasions, just in my car, walking down the street, out in a restaurant? Yeah, I cried a lot. I was upset. I didn't sleep for 7 months, other than 1 or 2 hours a night, if that. 7 months straight, I slept on the sofa for 7 months straight because I couldn't sleep in what was our marital bed. At times, my youngest son, the Moses basket, would bring it down, put it next to me on the sofa, feed him, put him to sleep or whatever, and I would be asleep on the sofa. even though at one point my back was aching and killing me, but I just couldn't bring myself to go and sleep in what was Hazel and my bed. So yeah, tough times, but somehow I found a way through.
It's I listen to you talk about that clarity that came out of nowhere in the moment. It's I think it's something that it seems like you've always had, which is quite interesting though. And that's why I always go back to I always like to hear stories from people when they were younger to where they are right now. Because in the moment of things happening, one thing I'm hearing coming out from you repeatedly is I have the clarity of thought of this is what I want to do, or this is what I need to do, or this is who I am. And despite my circumstances around me, that seems to be like a consistent thing that you've built into you from a very young age, and it's just come out in different ways, shapes, or forms. And when you talk about some of the emotions that you're feeling, the grief that you're feeling, did you show that to the boys, especially your son? There was 3, or did you hide that side of you?
Yeah, that's a really significant point that you just made, because one of the things that helped me to understand what I should do was actually turn to a couple of grief charities, and one in particular called Winston's Wish, who help parents who've lost a child, or children who've lost a parent, and the material and data, if you like, from them was really, really clear in how you articulate death of a parent to a child is hardly dependent on their age, because just even their recognition and knowledge of what death is and its permanence doesn't even really properly happen until they're 5 to 7. Maybe it can be a little bit younger, maybe certainly can be depending on the child. But one of the things that they prescribe, if you like, Ned, is you don't use ambiguous language. You keep the language simple, but also as well don't even simple things like don't use passed away. Say died, because and then stick with that word died consistently throughout the conversations, in order for that message to at some point it will register. To be consistent as well, because at 3 to 7 and plus whatever, there was still not really the understanding of what was properly. And he used to, first few days, weeks, and months, to a year, possibly a little bit more. He was still thinking that money would come back at some point, and I'd have those conversations with him. And as a society, natural instincts are societal, instincts, as I call them, is to, as a man, not only do you have to be strong, but to my boy, I guess I should be strong. I'm not sure that I'm upset, but actually, all the data says that's exactly what you shouldn't do. You should actually cry. Now, it doesn't mean you should be crying in front of them all day, every day, or whatever, because that's taking it to one side of the equation. But to have no fear about being vulnerable, and we were vulnerable together in that he got upset, I got upset, we cried together. There were times where he was upset and I would come in. Other times actually where I got upset, he would be upset, and he'd put his hand around me and say, "It's okay, Daddy, we're going to be okay." And he was obviously mimicking how I'd behaved with him. But it was important to be not only clear that this was permanent, but also to actually, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be upset that mummy died. And that has continued for him, 13, and continued with my youngest son now, who never ever met his mum, but has a relationship with her based on photos and videos and stories about her and everything, myself and other family members and friends. And so he feels like he knows her. He will talk about her as if he knows her, as if he'd met her. And yeah, it's important to he'll turn around and say, "Oh, I miss mummy." Someone would say, "How can you miss someone you never met?" But as far as he's concerned, it's his mum. He knows enough about her from her favourite colour. He knows that she didn't like seafood, etc., etc. He will sometimes mention these things about her as if he knew them, and it wasn't that he heard them from me or some other family. So, yeah, vulnerability. On the one aspect, as a man, is important, and I remember I've articulated it a few times in different forums and things like that. This about the societal norms. Vulnerability is actually a superpower. We've got it twisted. We've got it so wrong, right? We seem to have somehow missed the trick in that being vulnerable allows us to get in touch with a side of us that isn't ever possible to get in touch with without being vulnerable. You can't get in touch with certain sides of you if you're not willing to be vulnerable. And one of the things that was also clear to me is that as a now solo father and raising two boys, I can't afford to show them a masculinity that isn't in touch with who I am, that isn't in touch with my beliefs, and is going to subject them to the stereotypes of what it means to be a boy and what it means to be a man. And that's just period, let alone with everything that we see going on in the world today. It's so important. I can't stress how important it is to me. Raising two young men in a world that wants them, is constantly trying to tell them to be a particular way, constantly trying to tell them that boys and men don't cry, boys and men should be tough, boys and men don't do vulnerability. It's just not an option. It really is not an option for me to be that way and for me to raise my boys that way. And while that is out of step with most, I think, if you like, people that we know and so on, it's just not an option for me. It really isn't.
I think it's such a great way to raise kids where you can express the fullness of who you are and not hide from it. It's amazing how your youngest son never meeting your mum can talk about mummy and can express that that relationship, and that all comes from you creating that environment and being open and not hiding that part of yourself, which even as I listen to you talk right now, obviously it's still raw, it's still emotional, it's still there, but you opening that side of yourself and giving some of that to your son, and he can feel that love and that joy, and he takes down his own journey. That's absolutely amazing. It's such an example of the impact that we have to play, and I'm not going to say as parents, but as men in particular, to raise our children up with that side of them.
Yeah.
Because we're modeling that on a day to day, and we can choose to, if you chose to, you can be like, you know what, I'm going to protect myself and protect that side of me because I don't want to show them that hurt, grief, pain, whatever. But actually, by you protecting yourself, you're limiting the experiences your children are going to have. And I love you
Yeah,
just describing that in the way that you just did. It's so powerful.
yeah. And I remember. I don't know if it was a conversation with someone I know, someone else, but so if I don't show them that, who
Mm.
is? Right? Where else are they going to learn that from? And in fact, there were some members of our family who took issue with um, with my approach, um, and said, "No, no, you should be putting a bold face on it." You know, I don't know what anecdotal evidence you have, right? But I've gone to the grief experts. I've gone to the experts who work with children every single day who've lost a parent, right? In the UK, in every single class, right? The data is that in every single class throughout the UK, there's a child that has lost a parent. That's facts. So this charity, Winston's Vision, whatever, they deal with children in this situation every single day. This is what they do. I don't know how you think you seem to know better than this charity, but you know what? I'm going to follow their advice. But also, as well, I'm like, have you lost a wife or a husband? Right? Have you had to raise a newborn baby?
Mm-hmm.
No. But you're trying to tell me how to do it. Like, look, I appreciate what you might be coming from a good place in this, but you need to fall back. Because if you don't fall back, yeah, we're going to end up ending with a different relationship because I have to raise my kids in the best way that I know how. Now, if I was doing some fundamentally obscure and weird things and whatever that were to the detriment of my boys' well-being and whatever, then by all means, come to me with concerns. But outside of that, get out of my face, man, because you're just chatting nonsense now, and it was something that I didn't want to do, but it was something that was needed. I needed to do because I get people have their opinions about things, and that's fine. You're all entitled to. But I think, especially, well, I don't think it's a recent thing by any stretch of the imagination. But people often like to give opinions
Yeah.
based on feelings
Mm-hmm.
rather than facts. Right? Uh, 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 um, and I know that's a hard thing to not do, but also at the same time, I'm like, well, one, no one can truly understand what I'm going through unless you've been through it, and that counts for life, right? In general, and even when two people go through a very similar situation, their interpretation and how they deal with it is, completely different. Again, one of the things that has been an underlying theme for me has been, especially over the period of time that I got to know lots of other young widows and widowers with children and so on, was that even within that community of widows and widowers with children, there were there were different use cases. So there were women whose partners had passed away while they were pregnant, and they were in the last months of their pregnancy, so had to continue pregnancy on their own, through to women who've been widowed multiple times. Even a woman who's a good friend of mine now, have been friends for 8 years. She's been widowed twice in that period. Her husband died in the same year as Hazel, and then another partner that she had died a few years ago. The economic circumstances that people are in are different. Hazel and I were really anal about finances and wills and things like that, and so we made wills and we said, if one of us passes away, this is what we're going to put in place. Blah 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 blah. There was a woman who was a few years younger than me at the time. Her husband passed away. He committed suicide early to mid-30s, he committed suicide. No will. She worked one shift a week. They just moved house to a lovely big home, but that had a £2,700 a month mortgage. How was she going to pay that? With 3 kids and a whole host of other bills. HMRC was chasing her because of her husband's expense and all kinds of things. So what I was able to do, in part as well, was say, hey, my situation is shit, of course, but actually it could be even more crap. I could have financial concerns. Hazel didn't commit suicide. She didn't leave me. She would have been around if she could. And I used some of those situations for other people to help me say, the situation is shit, but actually I can take this from my situation. And I use that in part to also kind of help me carve a new pathway out for me and my boys.
What is it that people can give you in this type of period? Because you mentioned how obviously we lead with our feelings and we give you advice and it's not needed. What do you need the most in these kind of situations?
What was good from one of the charities was that, and I think it was Winston's Wish again, they actually put together a guide. Actually, no, I think it was Widowed and Young. They actually had a flyer, and on A4, on one side was when someone is, young with children, not necessarily children, but do's and don'ts. And it was really as simple as that. A list of do's and don'ts in terms of actions that you should do, actions that you shouldn't do, things that you should say, things that you shouldn't say. And when I discovered this, I asked my friend who was helping me out, a really good close friend of mine, and I said, look, all the people that you're communicating to that are coming to you about stuff, send them this. Because, again, this charity have been there, done it, got the T-shirt, they've worked with young widowers, they know exactly, and have used that to create this flyer. This is absolutely great. And I'm like, oh my God, it's so simple. It is so simple. And it was just really simple things like, again, 2 young boys, got a house to run. And people mean it with good intentions. But I say, if you need anything, let me know. I'm like, my wife has just died, and I've got 2 young boys. I need a whole lot of fucking things, right? But then to also put it onto me, to say, I need to find some headspace to try and figure out what help it is that you should give me, as opposed to what this guide said and what a few people around us actually did. So one of my cousins came to the house every day for God knows how long, and he'd sort the washing out. The first few times he said, how do you use the machine? How do you use the dryer? How do you use the dishwasher? Yeah. Told him the first couple of times, and that was it. He would come, not even ask whether he should do, he would just do them. A couple of friends, every few weeks or month or whatever, one of them would come with baby wipes and nappies. He'd say, hey, are you going to be in? I'm passing by. If you're not in, I'm just going to leave them on the doorstep for you. Let me know if you need some more, otherwise I'll just bring it. So another guy would do shopping. So he would do an online shop, fruit, veg, meat, and whatever. Get it delivered to the house, like once a month, and he did that for a period of time. Didn't ask whether it was what he should do. He just kind of did it. Didn't ask, do you like apples or bananas or oranges or whatever? Just, didn't bog me down with any of those details. Just did a shop on the basis that there's going to be something in there that we like and it's going to be useful and relevant. So, and I get it's partly a British thing as well, where we don't like to talk about grief, we don't like to talk about death, and even worse than not talking about it, that we don't want to face it either. So there were some people that ran in the opposite direction, and I'm not saying they are bad people, but I'm saying because as a culture, we don't, when we when we talk to people, at least in the UK, say, how are you doing and whatever, we ask that question not to really understand whether someone's doing badly. It's something that we say, because if people start to really offload or whatever, we're not interested. So there are people who could face me on a daily basis and could put some sentences together, but there are others, and like I said, I'm not blaming them. But it was easier for them to have no contact with me and the boys than it was to be put in a position that made them feel uncomfortable. So rather than them feeling uncomfortable, they just removed themselves. That's a hard lesson to learn in life. But I understand it. Am I happy about it? Of course not, because it would have been nice to. But you know what? It is what it is. But that's the other thing in relation to vulnerability, where you don't really want to talk about difficult things. So it's easy to just run away or cover over it or whatever. And that, for me, was an option that was available to me. I remember I said, again, I don't know who was having a conversation, and they said, I think just as I said to you about something else, I said, I felt that I had no option but to be this particular way. And a couple of different people on different occasions said to me, actually, no, you made a choice. You still had a choice, even though to you, there was only one path that you could have gone down. You had a choice because other people in a similar situation would have made a different choice. And you chose to step up. You chose to be a dad. You chose to be vulnerable. You chose to raise your boys in a way that wasn't going to succumb to the stereotypes around being boys and men. That's a decision that I've now actually embraced it and said, yes, actually, I have made that decision to do that. It took me a little while to accept and get my head around it being a choice, because I just felt that there was no choice. But and just in life in general now, in terms of one of the mantras that I adopt, or ways of living rather that I adopt, is in every situation, no matter how much of it is out of our control, we still all have a choice. And if you can look at life in that way, it brings a different perspective. There's the serenity prayer, right? Whether you're religious or not, right? The serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I can't change Hazel Dye. I can't do it. But what I can do is say, what can I control in this situation? I can raise my boys. I can be the best dad that I can be to them. I can show them that vulnerability is a superpower. I can show them that actually, despite shit happening around you that is out of your control, you can still choose to live your life in a particular way. That's a hard thing for a lot of people to accept. Right? That's a hard thing. But I've been through sufficiently enough things in my life to recognize that. Do I focus on the things that I can't control? Do I? And I don't like using the term play the victim, because we're built differently. And clearly my makeup is different probably than a lot of people, in that in adversity I seem to somehow find strength from somewhere, and I don't know. I know not everybody has that. But actually, when you look at, and I'm a geek around data and stuff like that, with all the reading and everything like that, when you look at the stories of people that have been through adversity, there are a few core themes. And one of those is somebody somewhere along the line, for some reason, made a decision to accept the stuff that was out of their control that happened to them, but not let it dictate who they were for the rest of their lives. And that was a conscious thing that was done. And I said, I might be a widower, but a widower isn't who I am. I might be a solo dad, but a solo dad isn't who I am. I'm so much
been defined by that circumstances.
Yeah.
It's powerful. And it's that choice is the key, I think, fundamentally the key to the life, going back to the point you made earlier, the lifestyle that we choose to have. Is you recognizing that you do have a choice to play in everything. I might not have played a part in the circumstances I find myself in, but I do have a choice to make in the circumstances and how I'm going to navigate that situation. And so you made for you, it was a no-brainer. You just carried on. But like I said, for a lot of people, that would just completely debilitate them and shut them down. You just find a way to process your grief as well as raise two amazing boys in that period of time, which is inspiring. And I'm curious, how would you, with everything you've gone through, define resilience?
Wow. It's taken on a much bigger meaning in this past few years, actually, than I had looked at it previously, and hence why I started the project. Because for me, resilience is about that serenity prayer. If I wanted to encapsulate it, there is so much stuff that happens around us. I don't know what the numbers would be. Hundreds, thousands, maybe even millions there will be millions of things that happen in the world, right, around us. There's 7.7 billion in the world, people in the world. So many things that happen that are outside of our control. Resilience is about saying, what can I take control of? It's really as simple as that, because what that does, that allows the meaning to cover a number of different things in our lives. It can cover adversity in the extremes that I've experienced it with Hazel dying. It can cover everyday life, right? So, we look around us, what's going on in the world today. We're being bombarded constantly, left, right, and centre, social media, advertising. That's telling us that either we're not good enough, we're either not the right colour, we're not the right race, we're not the right religion, our house isn't big enough, our car isn't big enough, we're not going to the right places on holiday, we don't have the right friends, we don't have the right set of clothes, at least we don't have enough money. The list goes on. We're being constantly bombarded left, right, and centre about how inadequate, how not good enough we are. And even when it's not direct, it's kind of like, you walk out the street, someone's got the bigger house, someone's got the car, someone's doing this, that, and that. Even kids on an everyday basis, going out to school, and who's got the latest phone or trainers or this, that. For me, resilience is, can I put on my armour? When I step out my yard, what armour, what shield, what protection do I need to have in place in order to, when stuff's coming at me, what do I need to do? What can I do? And it's not even stepping out your yard anymore now as well, is it? Because, these phones,
your house right next to you, just ping, ping, ping.
Every single minute, right? Yeah, constantly. And so for me, I hadn't realised, and when the Resilience Project came to me some months back, well, in fact, during lockdown, it seemed as if everything was pointing to this, and I couldn't find a word for it. And so, for me, my thing now is about resilient living. Resilient living is saying, what do I need to do to live the life that I want? Not the life that the big companies want me to, the supermarkets and not the life that the big tech companies want me to, not the life that the governments and so on want me to live. What is the life that I want? How can I live intentionally? And then not only how can I live intentionally, what do I do? So when you talk about Atomic Habits from James Clear or Tiny Habits from BJ Fogg, when you look at The One Thing from the One Thing book from Jay Papasan, when you look at a number of different things out there, especially when you then go into things like Stoicism and you truly look and understand what is at the heart and root of Stoicism as a philosophy. Humanity has been on this earth for tens and hundreds of thousands of years. There have been pandemics, there have been people dying of diseases, people dying of cancer, and all those things, and other things, long before we even had names for mental illnesses, and so on and so forth. But throughout all of that, humanity has managed to find a way to be resilient. I think in these modern day times, there's a whole new level of resilience that is needed because of technology and the advancements of science, both medical and so on, to the point where we're being bombarded constantly in ways that we've never been. If we look at technology, right, in the grand scheme of our time on Earth, right, technology is but a minuscule of that amount of time. So what we have developed as humans is particular ways of living that have developed over hundreds of thousands of years. Technology now is taking us down a whole different path at quite a rate. We can't cope. We can't physically cope with the amount of data, the amount of information, the amount of noise going on in the world. So because of that, we have to find a way to live resiliently. There's no two ways about it. There are no two ways about it. Resilience isn't a kind of nice to have. It's a kind of how do we get resilience taught in schools so that the next generation is coming through? How do we ensure that those of us as adults, right, can learn how to be resilient? How do we ensure that the least privileged in our society, who've got a whole host of different worries and whatever, we enable them to find ways to live resiliently and that we can support them? It's much bigger than me, clearly, but for me, I want to do my little part of saying, how can I take my experiences that I've been through, wasn't raised by my parents, I was raised by my grandmother till she died of cancer. I looked after her and my siblings and assisted it until I was 14. Take all those experiences from my childhood to this present day. I'm a regular guy, don't come from any level of privilege. I want to be able to show other people, say, shit happens, I get it, but actually, you don't have to accept that way of living. You don't have to accept, actually, this has happened, so I'm just going to give up, whether it be, working class background trying to make good, whether it be a person of colour, whether it be a woman, and the injustices and the microaggressions that we face every day. Yes, living in the UK, are we going to be able to overturn some of those things? No. And some of those things will take a while, but actually there's a certain amount of things that we are in control of, that we can do. If I can do it, being nobody special or anything like that, I can face head on my wife dying. She died 5 hours after giving birth to our second son. If I can do that and raise my two, it's 9.5 years now since she died. If I can do that, then maybe a few other people can do that. If I can inspire a few other people, and a few other people inspire a few other people, and that chain kind of just expands and grows, maybe I can leave the world in a more resilient place than where I found it. Maybe my boys' generation can live like differently than the way that my generation has lived life, because that's how we felt we needed to, or that's what we've inherited from previous generations.
I am definitely inspired by the work that you're doing, by who you are and how you show up, how you are, I'm going to say, breaking down a lot of stereotypes and consistently just pushing forward a new way of looking at things, a new way of operating in life, and a new way of taking complete ownership of life, for sure. Where can people find out more about the resilience project that you're working on, and tap more into that?
Yeah, so on Instagram and Twitter, the handles are Resilience Cubed. In the middle of building a website, but it's not ready yet. But that Resilience Cube website will be up. I'm on LinkedIn, Alec Grant, and you're going to put some stuff in the show notes, right? So that yeah, that's me really. On socials, and hopefully the website's coming soon.
I would highly, highly encourage you to tap into the world of Alec Grant. Like I said, everything will be in the show notes, but here's some great, amazing writing on LinkedIn and other social platforms. And once the website's up, I will also update the show notes to put it in there for sure. But as you've heard, man's stories of just being real. You know, I fully support your journey to kind of create that world, not just for us, but for the future generations coming up, with your kids and my kids, where they're a lot more resilient, where they're a lot more intentional with the lives that they're creating. So I'm fully 100% behind you and your mission, and I really appreciate you sharing your story today.
You're welcome. It's thank you for giving me access to the platform that you've created. It's a calling for me now. I didn't appreciate it until lockdown. That when I was looking at my life and living intentionally, it became really apparent that actually, as much as my experiences have provided challenges, and at times where I've not wanted to accept those challenges, the reality is that my calling is to use those challenges to the benefit of others. And actually, the privileges that I now have are in order to help others who don't have access to those privileges or opportunities. And that's really important to me.
This is Everyday Leadership. We'll see you next week.